Hello everyone, I'm Xiao Qian. There is a girl from Jinan, Shandong who married to Taiwan for love 8 years ago. At first, she felt uncomfortable with the unfamiliar environment and even planned to return to her hometown after getting the marriage certificate. However, a small episode in the hospital completely changed her mind and destiny. Next, I will use the first person to tell the girl's experience in Taiwan. I am from Jinan, Shandong and married to Taiwan 8 years ago. I am really moved when I talk about my experience of seeing a doctor in Taiwan over the years. When I first came to Taiwan, I was not used to the lifestyle here, and I always felt that everything was not going well. At that time, I thought that I would not stay long anyway, and I would go back to Jinan as soon as the marriage certificate was issued. But something happened later that completely changed my mind. It was the second month after I came to Taiwan. That day, I was accompanying my mother-in-law to the hospital for a follow-up visit. There was an old lady with white hair in front of us. Because she was old, she forgot her health insurance card at home. She was so anxious that she stamped her feet. I thought to myself, this is troublesome. If you forget to bring your medical insurance card in Jinan Hospital, you will have a lot of trouble. Unexpectedly, the nurse from Taiwan was not angry, but smiled and said, "Grandma, don't be nervous. We will help you deal with it immediately." Then she took the initiative to help the old lady contact the Inspection and Protection Department to inquire about the information. This scene reminded me of the scene before the Spring Festival last year when I accompanied my mother to the first hospital in Jinan for medical treatment. Because my mother could not read and could not use the self-service registration machine, she went to the counter to find the staff for help. As a result, the young girl did not even raise her head and said impatiently, "The operation is posted over there, and it means you look at it yourself." My mother could only stand by awkwardly, and finally I helped her to operate it. At that time, I wondered why the attitude of the hospital staff could be so bad, but now I know that seeing a doctor can be so warm. Last summer, my good friend Xiao Feng from Taiwan accidentally fell while riding a public bicycle in Taiwan, and I hurried to accompany her to the emergency room. From the moment I entered the door, the performance of the doctors and nurses opened my eyes. The emergency doctor looked quite young, wore glasses, and spoke very gently. While cleaning Xiao Feng's wound, she asked questions, such as whether she was dizzy and nauseous. Did she hit her head when she fell? Should I do a simple checkup in case of a concussion? The nurse was also very attentive. She kept fanning Xiao Feng with a small electric fan and comforted her, saying, "Don't be afraid, the doctor's skills are very good." This meticulous care reminded me of my cousin's experience of falling off an electric bike in China last year. She waited for more than an hour to register at the hospital. It was finally her turn to see the doctor. The nurse was complaining while treating the wound, saying that young people nowadays are so reckless. Riding so fast in the hot weather made my cousin feel uncomfortable and drunk. What moved me most was my mother's experience when she came to Taiwan to visit relatives. My mother's medical treatment in Jinan was full of twists and turns. She had knee arthritis and was often in so much pain that she couldn't walk. It was really a life-threatening experience to see a specialist in Jinan. Every time she had to queue up at the hospital before dawn, she had to queue up at the door of the hospital. Once she finally got to the 10th number, but the specialist had something to do and didn't come. My mother was so upset that she cried. Later, because she couldn't see a good doctor in time, her arthritis became more and more serious, and she had problems walking. After coming to Taiwan, I immediately took my mother to the rehabilitation department of the National Taiwan University Hospital for a consultation. I didn't expect that the attending doctor would come out to pick us up in person and even helped my mother walk. During the consultation, the doctor was very patient. He not only asked about my mother's medical history in detail, but also demonstrated some simple rehabilitation movements in person. What touched my mother the most was that the doctor said that her Mandarin was not standard, and he specially found a nurse who could speak Chinese to translate. Seeing my mother wiping tears with emotion, I felt mixed emotions. After living in Taiwan for these years, my biggest feeling is that it is very convenient to see a doctor here, and it is very humane. For general minor illnesses, you don't need to go to a big hospital. You can solve it at the clinic at your doorstep. The doctors in the clinic are very friendly, and the treatment is very fast. You don't have to wait in a long line like in a Fae. If you need further examination, the doctor will directly refer you to a big hospital and even arrange an appointment for you. And the doctors in Taiwan really care about the patients. I remember that last year I suddenly had a severe stomach case, so I hurried to the clinic downstairs. The old doctor checked me without saying anything and specifically told me that if the symptoms worsened at night, I could come to see me at any time. I lived upstairs from the clinic. This kind of meticulous care is really rare in our hometown. I remember that once I had a stomachache angina, I went to the hospital for emergency treatment. I waited for more than 2 hours just to queue up for registration. I finally saw a doctor, but he took a quick look and wrote a bunch of examination orders without saying a word. He didn't care at all. I was in so much pain that I broke out in a cold sweat. Moreover, the medical expenses in Taiwan are really cheap. I remember when I first came here, I heard that there was national health insurance here, and I thought it was a gimmick. It was not until I really went to the doctor that I realized that this was a blessing for the people. The cost of seeing a doctor in Taiwan is really low. I remember that once I had a cold and a fever and went to the clinic for treatment. The registration fee was only 50 new Taiwan dollars, which is almost 10 yuan, and it also included the basic medicine cost. This is unimaginable in China. There is an aunt on the street where I live who is a low-income household, but she can still enjoy very good medical services. Once she felt uncomfortable in the heart, I accompanied her to the hospital and found that they took special care of these vulnerable groups. Not only were the medical expenses reduced, but even the process of seeing a doctor was given a green channel. I was thinking that if people with poor economic conditions got seriously ill in China, it would be even worse. Speaking of the attitude of medical staff, I was even more moved. Once I was at Taipei and Gung Memorial Hospital, I saw with my own eyes a young father holding a child with a high fever to see the emergency room. The child cried pitifully, and the doctor let them in without saying a word. What I didn't expect was that the doctor actually brought small toys with him and entertained the child while treating him. The nurse sister was even more attentive and kept teaching the young father how to physically cool the child, and even went to get a few antibiotic patches to give them. This scene reminded me of what I saw in the Municipal Children's Hospital when I returned to Jinan last year. A child with a fever was crying heartbreak, but there were more than 20 people waiting for the doctor in front of him, so busy that they couldn't even raise their heads, and the nurse also looked indifferent. In the end, the child's mother was so anxious that she stamped her feet and quarreled with others because of the queue jumping. The scene was particularly ugly. In Taiwan, doctors really pay attention to communicating with patients. Last year, my father-in-law was diagnosed with some problems with his lungs. The attending doctor not only explained the test results clearly, but also drew pictures for us. Every time we have a follow-up visit, the doctor will carefully ask about the recent situation and remind us of precautions. What touched me most was that once my father-in-law couldn't sleep in the middle of the night because he was worried about his condition. The next morning, we went to the hospital and the doctor made an appointment for psychological counseling for us without saying a word. This reminds me of my uncle's experience of seeing a doctor in Jinan. When he was diagnosed with lung cancer, the doctor just said that the situation was not good and did not explain in detail what the situation was. My aunt kept asking, and the doctor asked what medicine you know. Later, my uncle was worried all day long, and he was scared when he felt a little uncomfortable. In the end, we begged for help and asked someone to find an expert to explain the condition clearly. The social atmosphere in Taiwan is also very good. Many entrepreneurs have set up medical foundations to help people who cannot afford medical treatment. My neighbor's aunt has received help. Her son is seriously ill. The cost of chemotherapy alone is NT $700,000 to NT $800,000. It was the foundation that helped them through the difficult times. Not only do they contribute money and effort, but they also arrange for employees to visit them regularly and chat with them to relieve their boredom. To be honest, what has touched me most in these years of living in Taiwan is the medical system here. Every time I go back to Jinan, my relatives and friends like to ask about the situation in Taiwan. I tell them that it is not scary to see a doctor here. The doctors and nurses take care of you like a family member. Moreover, the hospitals here pay special attention to prevention. Every year, we can receive a physical examination notice to remind us what examinations to do. The community also often holds health lectures to teach everyone about healthcare knowledge. Sometimes I wonder why the medical gap between the two sides of the strait is so big. In fact, the professional level of doctors is similar. The key is that the service concept is different. In Taiwan, patients are always the first. Doctors will not be careless just because you are an ordinary citizen, and nurses will not ignore you just because you are from another province. This feeling of equal treatment and sincere care is really warm. I will always remember one night last winter when I suddenly had a severe stomachache. My mother-in-law took me to the hospital without saying a word. The doctor on duty was about to leave work, but seeing that I was sweating in pain, he immediately asked me to go in for examination. After the examination, he waited until I finished taking the painkillers before leaving. He also told me to come to me directly if I felt uncomfortable in the middle of the night. This feeling really made people feel warm. Now, every time I go back to Jinan, I feel very uncomfortable when I see people crowded in the hospital and everyone's face is full of anxiety. I always feel that seeing a doctor should not be a scary thing. In Taiwan, I deeply understand what patient-centered service is. The medical system here is not only about treating diseases, but also about conveying a kind of care and warmth. I have experienced too many touching moments in Taiwan over the years. Although I came here because of marriage at the beginning, now I really feel that this is my second home. Especially when I'm sick, I can feel such warm care. I am really happy. I hope that the medical gap between the two sides of the strait can be gradually narrowed, so that more people can feel that seeing a doctor is no longer a torment, but a warm experience of being cared for. That's all for today's video. If you find what I said interesting, please like and follow me. Your support is my biggest motivation to continue updating. Thank you.